It is on. Can you hear me? I hope.
I think it was blue.
They don't need to hear me that badly.
You're
to be
on.
honest.
You're good. All right. Well, hello everybody. Welcome. Thank you guys for being here. Welcome to the Hustling Sideways podcast. I'm Alan Halas. I'm a music writer.
And I'm Jim Love, and I'm a keynote speaker and a motivational speaker. I forgot my intro. Well, we're really excited to be here. This is number, I think, 5 in this series that we've had.
I lost count.
Something along those lines, but it's been a real joy to partner with the 707 Hub. Alan and I always talk about we wish this existed when we were in college, and we would have been here all the time, just like where you guys are. Entrepreneurship is really critical. I know we've all learned a lot. We have a lot of repeat folks in the audience, which is super cool, and excited to just share a story today. But shout out to 707 Hub for having us, and we'll continue doing this and looking forward to a lot more. But we have a guest today.
Yes, we have an amazing guest.
We do, as we have a guest every time. I don't know why I said that like it was breaking news. But
Well,
yeah.
I mean, now we got a guest.
Yeah, we got a guest. It's great.
So today we have Alex Campbell with us.
What's up, everyone?
Alex is the founder and CEO of a company called SavorWe, and an alum of Marquette University as well.
Yes,
Funny how that works out.
it is.
Yes.
The smartest, only the smartest.
Only the smartest. And your face, Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Alex is actually a year after us at Marquette.
That's right. So when Alex walked in tonight, we had a moment of like, I've met you before.
Yeah,
I don't know where, I don't know
definitely.
when, but
Yeah.
it was a
Few beers in there.
Yeah, that actually, we were like, it was probably a Murphy's situation or a Jeffrey's situation. But either way, that's the small world of Marquette and how it goes. And that was, I mean, probably 10 years ago. But actually, even more than that.
10 years, that's a...
Let's talk about something else.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel that old.
Yeah.
Let's bring it back a little bit before that. How about that? Before the 10-year nostalgia.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit kind of about your background, where you grew up, and ultimately kind of how you got your interest in food and culinary arts.
Yeah. Grew up in Barrington, Illinois. Born in '92. We actually spent 4 years over in Japan when I was a toddler. My dad was working for Motorola on like telecommunications, setting up basically antennas and whatnot in the Middle East and Asia markets. Was there through like the invention of the Razor, which was like the coolest flip phone at some point.
Raise your hand if you know what the Razor.
I had one.
Fantastic.
There we go.
Y'all, this thing was lit, and it was like
It was like
cool.
groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah, really thin. It was wild. I had like a flashback of memories.
Yeah,
of the
like
Razor.
everyone had it. I'm like, I really need one, but I like saw it a year before it came out. So like, I grew up around tech. Like, I grew up in innovation and like seeing new things. Ended up, going through high school, trying to figure out what I was going to do. Came to Marquette. I was like, I'm going to be a doctor because everyone else was an engineer in my family, and I was like, screw them. Like, we're going to do this.
I'm going to do something else really, really successful.
Yeah.
And I got a 27 on my first chemistry test, and I was like, maybe doctor's not for me.
Out of 30?
More than 27.
It was one of those ones where I literally, like, I won't name the professor, but he brought me in the room after the second time. I had 27, 29, and then a 32. So I at least was getting better.
Okay, so you're getting better and better. Yeah.
And I was like, this might not be for me. And he told me, he's like, hey,
This might not be for you.
and I was like, you're wrong. I'm going to come back and retake your class just to pass. So I did, and I got a BC, and then I dropped everything.
Awesome.
And I was like,
and guess what? BCs get degrees.
exactly.
Fair
So
enough.
then I kind of figured out like what the next step was going to be. And at the time, Marquette started the entrepreneurship program, or I'd been like a year into it. So I was like, that seems cool, and it was in arts and sciences, I think, or was it in the business school? I don't remember. But started looking into entrepreneurship, picked up economics. That was great until Russian theory in like senior year, and I was like, this is so pointless. I'm never going to do anything with this. So I dropped that, kept with the entrepreneurship side, and then picked up finance and did a 5th year. But the entrepreneurship piece honestly shaped a lot of how I thought through the world. And like one of my projects was actually like, you got to pitch a startup. So started a company. I use it in quotes because it didn't go anywhere, but it was a cool idea. It was basically we were doing like Facebook albums at the time. We were pulling all those images and the underlying metadata you could stitch the pictures together based on time and location.
Oh, that's
So
really
think
cool.
like Google Street View, we were doing
Yeah.
that for like parties. And then basically we wanted to create like a time slider so you could see like the party, you know, throughout time and then from different perspectives and things like that.
That's a
So,
brilliant idea.
yeah, it was cool. My buddy was in finance, so he was the CFO, and then I found another buddy to code, and we're like, we're gonna do this. And we didn't do it, but we did get a little bit of code done, so it was like, it started working a little bit, and then I graduated, and my dad said it's time to go get a real job. That kind of brought me into the next step of things.
Yeah.
Sure.
Now, I think it's important, and I know we're kidding a little bit, but you had an idea that didn't go, right?
Yeah.
And that's totally okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to acknowledge, like, obviously there's success stories up here, but you're gonna have some ideas and they may not go, but you learn something from
Yeah.
them. And we've had the same thing happen, it's, not everything is gonna be super successful, it's the lessons you take away from it.
Yeah, I think 90% of the stuff's not gonna work.
Yeah, exactly.
Realistically, and like the 10% that does, like it's based on like a good idea. It's not like a perfect idea, so that's like the one thing is, if you wait for perfection, what is it, like Churchill's like perfection's the enemy of progress or something?
Yeah.
If you wait for that like perfect moment, you're never gonna start anything, so it's more of like just do something good. Like, I mean, realistically, like bringing a chef into your home isn't like this, like we're not curing cancer or doing anything, it's just like, that seems like a cool idea.
Right.
Because I loved food, like grew up cooking, cooked for my friends and family, but yeah, so like to that point, I think it is important to know like 90% of the stuff fails and most of the success you see online is fake. I know like anyone who's posting a bunch of like cool stuff, like I know a lot of cool guys who are doing really, really good things, and then I talk to them on the side and they're like, dude, everything's screwed up. Like everything's very bad. So.
But it looks great.
Yeah,
as long as it
looks
good.
It's like
That
look
filter.
good, feel good. But,
Did you have that mindset of the 90% before that
No.
failure, or did you?
I was
learn
so
that?
cocky.
Yeah.
I was like, I remember saying, I'm like, I'm going to Harvard Business School, like, this company's gonna blow up, I'm not gonna have to get a job, like, I was so cocky. And then I went and worked at Accenture, got humbled a little bit, and then my real, like, humbling moment was when I quit and, like, had my first meeting, but we'll get into that in a little
Sure.
bit.
Yeah. But to bring it back to cooking too, you said you grew up cooking, and so always had an interest in food then?
Yeah, I was a chubby little boy. I enjoed food a lot, so I was
You
just
made it
kinda-
and you ate it.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I like legitimately, like, my mom had a rule. I put on some weight when I was younger, and because my cousin was living with us, he was going through his like growth spurt, and like he would just eat like a box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch and wouldn't gain a pound. I'm like, well, I want to do that. Like, my cousin's my man. Like, I'm gonna do that. So I started doing that, and I got fat. And my mom's like, no more snacks. Like, no more snacks in the house. But I was like, I'm gonna find a way to get snacks. So like literally after class, there's a Subway. I'd go like smash a 6-inch meatball sub before going home. I was like, I love food. Like it's a good thing. But I really started like learning and teaching myself how to cook, and it's become like a big stress relief for me. I do think there's art in it. I think there's a ton of ego in like the space, but like there is art in taking something raw and like turning it into a finished product,
Yeah.
especially like seeing someone enjoy it.
Yeah.
I became fascinated with that as I went through like Accenture and all these things and just kept learning different stuff.
Yeah.
Sure. So at what point does that merge then, the idea of starting a business? Obviously we talked about the one that had failed previously or kind of just never really got off the ground, but then merging that with a lifelong love of food, let's say. When did those things kind of come together for you?
I didn't really know it was going to happen that way. So I was at Accenture. Honestly, I'm extremely happy I ended up doing something corporate. Like it taught me a ton of, well, like on the consulting side, like you're literally 5:30 on a flight on a Monday morning, land clients, you're working probably 70 hours until Friday. And then Friday's nice because like noon, there's the rule, like unwritten rule, no meetings after 12, but you're already burnt out. But it taught me a lot of like resiliency, and like you didn't have an option but to succeed, because if you failed, you were fired. Like it was very cut and dry, and like I don't know what it's like anymore. I'm sure it's a little more lenient, but at that time for me, it was like good to have that because I needed structure, and it taught me you had to be responsible for like your outputs, like your outcome yourself. Like it's how you presented yourself to a client, and honestly, it's both ways. It's like we'd go work with the clients and then you'd go out and drink with them, right? And that's like, I'm not saying everyone has to drink, but a lot of stuff was learned in those moments. Like if you didn't compose yourself in the right way, like things ended up poorly. Like clients would be like, all right, we're done. Like just stuff happened. But for me, it was always just like, okay, like if I was, you know, up working till 2, I had to be in the office at 6:30 or 7. We had to be there first. So I was like very happy that I did that, but I hated it. It pissed me off that I would work so much for a 10% bonus, and to me it made no sense. I was lucky enough to be like in a startup within the company, so that was really cool. I learned a lot, but I just was like, this isn't for me. So I made a life goal that 26, I was gonna quit my job to start up a company or join a startup.
Sure.
So kind of fast forward a few years, my birthday's in May, and then the project got extended till September, so I was like, shit, like I'm gonna miss this deadline, like this sucks. That's another thing too, don't hold yourselves to deadlines, because like you get
like
so,
a life deadline.
yeah,
Yes.
just any deadline. I mean, some deadlines you have to hit, but like stuff like that, just kind of be flexible, like, you know, because I also had another one that was like Forbes 30 under 30 didn't happen, so now I'm like 40 under 40. Like, we'll
I have thought the same thing.
Yeah.
I might try and make a 30 under 30 list.
But yeah, so it's just like, I kind of went through this whole thing, and then I called my dad that day, and I was like, man, like, this was April, and I was like, this sucks. The project just got extended. You know, I really wanted to quit and do this. I had got rejected from 2 startups at the time. They didn't like the consulting kind of culture I was going to bring, which it's funny now, because now everyone wants like
To be a consultant.
We need someone who's just only going to work and not sleep and not do anything. It's like,
rinse and repeat.
yeah, right. So anyways, like I walked into the office that day, and that meeting, they canceled all consulting projects. So like that project got canceled, so I was like, oh shit, like this is, I don't know, sorry.
That's okay.
I was like, whoa, like this is kind of a sign, like let's see what happens and run with it. So I ended up going on a trip to Thailand with some of my really good buddies from Marquette. Had a lot of fun and got into an argument with a friend about, because the like Russian market he was trading commodities. The Russian market was like going berserk, so he had to like leave this club we were at. And I'm like, dude, like, you have no passion for life. Like, we got in this like really heated fight, and he's like, you don't either. Like, you say you're gonna quit, and I'm like, I'm quitting my job when I land. So I literally like got to Chicago and quit my job. And I was like, all right, I'm done.
Those Sunday scaries had to be off the charts.
Yeah, it was a pretty. I was one of those like, whoa, what did I do? But the guy, like my MD, who was also my mentor, he was pretty high up in the firm, and he's like, hey, just come in and let's talk. And I had no idea I was going to do anything food related. I had no idea what I was going to do.
Right.
But I just knew it was time. Like, I just needed to leave.
If you didn't jump, it was gonna.
Yeah,
you were gonna just be
well,
there.
because everyone falls like kind of slave to the money, right? Like everyone, you know, you get paid and like you keep progressing, and all of a sudden you're like making a lot of cash, and you're just like, well, I'm comfortable here.
This
right?
is
Right.
that's.
And I don't mean that like everyone has their own paths, but for me that just wasn't like. I'd much rather like embrace, you know, Cubs embrace the suck, like just be like, yeah, just eating glass is terrible.
I think it's important to have motivation beyond just
Yeah.
that. I mean, obviously money is great, but like if that's the only thing you're motivated by, like,
Right.
I always kind of question.
Yeah,
But,
it's like
you know,
like everyone's got like the side hustles, like we
Right.
were talking about earlier. Like you kind of people have things they're passionate about, but I think everyone gets muted by society. Like I believe society places so much emphasis on like success and like what success looks like, but like I read this short story yesterday. It's like The Fisherman and the Businessman. I don't know if you've heard that, but basically like long story short, this guy's on a beach and he's like, if you keep on, you know, fishing longer, you'll be able to buy a bigger boat. And he's like, well, I just want to spend time with my family. He's like, but then you can buy this. And the guy's like, okay, then what? He's like, well, then you can buy 5 more boats and have more fish. And he's like, well, okay, then what? He's like, well, then you can go public. And he's like, okay, then what? He's like, then you can retire for a ton of money and move to a beach hut and spend time with your family. He's like, I'm already doing that, right? So it's like everyone's success is measured differently. But I think it's like kind of following your dream and like figuring out like what is like The Alchemist, great book. If you haven't read it, read it. It kind of like got me to that point where I'm like, all right, I need to do something. Like my life's path is not consulting.
Right.
It's like, I'm gonna go try and do something. So like had this meeting with my boss. He's like, hey, we're gonna give you a year leave of absence, so just go like try some stuff. And I was like, okay, cool. Like that's unheard of, but thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was like, I mean, I worked really hard. Like,
Sure.
I met the right people. Like, I got very lucky, very fortunate. I put in a lot of hard work for like that moment. And I was young, 26. So then I'm like, what am I gonna do? And on the flight home from Thailand, I read an article about a guy doing these dinner parties in New York. And basically I was like, oh, interesting. Like, what about a marketplace for in-home cooking classes? So I was like, okay, I know how to cook spaghetti and meatballs. I live with two of my best friends in the city. Let's start cooking spaghetti and meatballs for people in our apartment. So it's like, people would like buy tickets. It was insane. People would buy tickets, like mostly friends in the beginning. They'd come over, I'd like make spaghetti and meatballs, and then we take tip money and go like have beers after. And I was like, all right, what's this gonna be? And I had a friend at Accenture at the time who was like, hey man, come join me. I don't know where this journey is gonna go. And he was like all on board, and then he pulled away at the last second. I still like love him dearly. We're still great friends, and eventually we're gonna get into something.
Who was the first non-friend to show up to you guys making spaghetti and meatballs? Like, and how did they find out about it?
So we actually, the first non-friend, I went to their apartment.
Oh, you went to the apartment.
So that's when the kind of light bulb moment went off, where I was like,
Yeah.
interesting, like people want to do these things like in their own place. And that's, and like I looked and there was other companies that tried in like 2012, and I was like, I don't know, it's just.
Was it like awkward?
Timing.
I'm here to
Yeah, it
make
was
spaghetti.
weird, and I was so stressed. I was like, I haven't cooked for like anyone but my friends. It's a bunch of random people.
Are you bringing your own?
Yeah, I
things,
brought like everything. Like
Yeah,
I legit, like I will never do it again. But it was like it's a good learning experience. Like if you ever start a company and you're not like really getting your hands dirty in the beginning, like don't even bother.
You have to.
You have to do everything to prove that something could happen.
Yeah, we've had, Ellen and I have done a bonus episode before talking about the funny situations we found ourselves in. And one time I went to school early and ended up in a geometry class and just sat there all alone. And I was like, this is my life, this is what we're doing.
I will say I've never done anything that has had me result in sitting in a geometry class, and I'm very proud of
because
that.
geometry can kiss my ankle side to side. That's a good geometry joke for the record. But either way, yes, you do find yourself, and you have to be uncomfortable to do it. And you gotta find
that's,
joy in
it's
that.
just, it is. It's like finding peace in the chaos.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I taught this thing and I was like, all right, so this was 2018, 2019. I was like, all right, I'm gonna go see if I can find chefs to join the platform. So I started literally like scouring LinkedIn, and I emailed like 500 chefs. And I was like, hey, do you wanna make extra money? And like all of them were like, no. I'm like, okay, well this is not going anywhere. Like, cause it was crazy. And then all of a sudden, I had like 3 on, and then COVID hits. And now everyone's like, the spotlight was just straight on the restaurants and like how crazy the industry is and all this stuff. So then I'm like, I can use this moment as like, hey, this is a place where like it's two-sided. You kind of solve two problems. A, chefs are working insanely long hours. They're not actually customer facing. Half the time, whoever's coming up with the menu is like the executive chef. It's not anyone who actually gave the ideas. And on the other side, like consumers and like corporations are looking for new things to do, especially during COVID. So we kind of capitalized, like doubled down, built a mobile app. I had literally hired a bunch of interns and was like, all right, we'll meet in the office. You know, this is St. Patty's Day. I was like, we'll meet in the office this week, and all of a sudden the world shut down. So I was like, all right, we're not meeting in the office. So we had to like build everything virtually, which I don't like. Like, go into the office, people, when you get out of school. Like, it's very important.
Something about face-to-face
You
interaction.
need to have that. It's yes, it's very important. But yeah. So.
Okay. So kind of explain the platform just a little bit for people, just to kind of bring it back a little bit. So my first thought is kind of like Uber, or like a Uber Lyft kind of situation where you request someone to come over and cook.
Yeah. So basically, how we developed it is chefs will put up menus that they want to serve, and then based on your radius, you can look at different menus that are available for like a day you want to have a party or whatever's going on. So then you book, chef shows up. It's all automated on the back end. So like chef shows up with the ingredients, they'll use your plateware and stuff, and then they'll cook everything, plates, and then kind of head on their way. So it's literally bringing like the chef's table restaurant experience to your own dining room.
Cool.
And that's kind of what we've been hitting on, and we've had a ton of iterations on it since day one. But that's in essence what we're doing.
How far in advance do you need to book someone to come? Like, can I do it right now?
48 hours.
Okay.
Yeah. So and then we built. We call it food bites. So that's like the other piece of the platform. So basically it's some predictive analytics. We did some like ML, where machine learning, where you can start understanding people's individual taste preferences based on like questions you can ask them, but you can get really cool with it. We're like, all right, if what favorite animal would you be if you could be one? And you can come up, some of it's fun, but some of it's like legit. You can start being like, all right, you're gonna love this dish from this specific restaurant right in this area.
That's cool.
So we're launching that beta soon just to kind of test if we think it's really cool, but if people actually click on it. So that's like, I've set it up where we're not just relying on one revenue stream, it's more like
different options,
Yeah.
different ways.
Yeah.
For chefs, is it essentially freelancing for them that they don't have to commit to, other than obviously when they get matched with somebody?
Yeah, they do, they're all like 1099, so it's
Yeah.
just a side hustle for them, so. But they make way more than they would if they worked the restaurant that night. But it's just a sticky industry because it's so archaic, so there's a lot of like learning and unlearning you have to do, but I'm very long on it. Like restaurants will always be here, but where trends are going in industry and like people want more experiences, and like we're seeing it with corporate clients now, like they're tired of going out to restaurants because the service sucks. Service sucks because the people working there don't want to be there.
Right. It works out. I think it's very interesting just listening to your story about how this kind of you got pushed into it a little bit by being goaded in by your friend to be like, quit your job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then like the big moment of also, I think, COVID hitting, and then everybody relying on, well, we can't go to a restaurant, or we can't work in a restaurant. Like big moments seem to be a thing. I'm also a believer that no matter where you go, you pick up things from the different steps along the way. Do you think that you picked up anything from like the corporate world that has carried over into either, that could be like work ethic or anything like that has, influenced how you operate SavorWe?
Yes. I'm almost like way too rigid, like when it comes to just like really small things at the company, because it's like, at Accenture, it was very like this item goes into this folder and this folder structure, right? And like that's how it should be. And in my mind, that's how it should be. But then you start working with other individuals, and that was my thing. Like I had never really managed anyone. So kind of rewind a second. So like my really big humbling moment was I had got this custom suit in Thailand. Like just quit my job, flying to New York to go to this dev shop. I'm like feeling like $1 million. Walk into this thing. And like, land, I'm like 26, I'm strutting around New York, I'm like, I'm the man, like I'm CEO now, all this stuff. And I walk into this meeting with the CEO of the company, big company, he goes, dude, why the hell are you wearing a suit? And I'm like, oh, wow. And then like he brought me out to this long lunch, and he's like, hey man, like, there's a lot, and then I like sat in the meeting and I just didn't present myself in a way, like I was trying to exude like confidence, but it came across as cocky. So like I had brought that over from Accenture because it was just like you're working at Accenture, you're kind of cocky about it, and that moment really like humbled me a lot of like, hey, you just like be yourself, and like being your authentic self goes so much further. So I think like that was a big thing I kind of just learned along the way. It was like in the beginning you think everything's going to be amazing. Like we launched the website, and I'm like 100,000 people are gonna download this thing in a day. Like 2 people did over 3 months, and I was like, oh, so that's a cake. It's like you just constantly are getting beat down. Like I spend 40% of my day like depressed. The other 60% is like really, really happy. But it's like I literally on Tuesday sat in the shower, like with the shower coming down. I was like, what am I doing? Like this is insane. Like this
Like
is
just overwhelmed.
Yeah, you just are like,
things.
what am I doing? Like, and then but that resiliency from like stuff I've learned, like there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Like no matter how dark it gets, it's like you're just one yes away from something good happening. And that's like the motivation. You just learn that kind of over time, where you're like, I've probably been told no like 300 times from investors. Like people are like, this will never work. And now it's fun because some of them are coming back to like, oh, it's kind of working, and I'm like, well, too late.
The price doubles then.
Yeah.
I think resiliency is such a learned skill.
Yeah.
I mean, you really, because I mean, I'm thinking you just had 3 months, 2 people join. Like you could have given up easily.
Oh, I mean,
100%.
I almost quit last summer.
Yeah, like
No, I mean wherever this is going, but like,
it's
sorry
okay.
investors, but
He's still alive.
but it was like I literally sat there and I was like, like, dude, I had $800 in the bank account. I had $20,000 of stuff I had to pay people at the end of the month. Like
Yeah.
That's a pretty daunting, like,
Yeah,
and
math
these are
doesn't
not,
math.
yeah, these are not like, they're employed, like, they're relying on you to pay them. Like, they have lives. So, like, it's not, like, when you become an entrepreneur and, like, you get people to start working for you, they believe in you, but they're also putting their trust in you. So it's, like, really important to, like, figure it out. So I was like, how do you figure it out? And I figured it out. But that creates that resiliency. And that doesn't go, like, you don't have to be facing down the barrel of, like, a gun to, like, find resiliency. Like, there's a lot of things in life you can get resiliency from. Just being like, all right, you know, I failed that test. Screw it. I'm going to study harder and try again. All right, this didn't work. Like, life's full of setbacks, but as long as you just are like, all right, I have the courage to dust off and try again, like, you'll end up getting to where you need to be. Unless you're not resilient. No.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, you brought up earlier being driven by passion. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, if you're not passionate about it, like, any of those moments you're gonna, it's not enough to keep going.
Right, but that's,
You
but you have to
be
listen to that too.
Mhm.
Like, if you're doing something where you aren't passionate about, you shouldn't be doing it.
Exactly.
Like, it's just, and that's, like, your intuition is right, like, 95% of the time.
Yeah.
And, like, that's the inner voice. Like, I meditate a lot. It just helps, like, if I'm really facing a bunch of different, because my mind's just always on. Like, I don't sleep well. I'm probably up, like, 6 to 7 times a night, just, like, constantly, like, oh. And I have crazy dreams. Like, dude, I had the weirdest dream. I'm not even gonna.
I had a geometry dream last
Yeah,
night.
yeah.
I wouldn't hear about that. Last night I had a dream about failing.
Yeah, but it's just like.
It's coming back to you.
It's coming back. I'm glad I mentioned
You
it.
gotta go back to the class.
Yeah. Yeah, were you in that same classroom?
Literally, same teacher, same,
Oh.
yeah, and now I'm going through it again. Let's talk about something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think
Let's sit down, hold on, we can talk about this.
I love bringing
What
up
is the teacher saying to you in that
Yeah,
moment?
he first of all gave me several detentions.
Oh.
And I didn't do well on the test. And 16-year-old Jim is still sitting in
I
there.
think we need to unpack this.
We do, that's a different show.
I think we shouldn't at this point. I'm a little worried.
But I think that's just such a critical thing.
Yeah.
You really have to be, like, because you're gonna get 1,000 setbacks, and you gotta go 1,001 more times
Yeah.
to keep going.
Yeah.
And I do think it's important to, like, you mentioned meditation. That I think a lot of people forget, like, we just sort of pretend like we're these machines that can keep going. You have to have something that brings you back to earth.
Yeah.
I pray and I meditate. That's kind of my two things, and I'm not good at it, but I
Yeah.
try it, and I
Yeah.
make sure it happens. And whatever your thing is
Yeah.
to bring you back to center, to peace, to calm, is what you should really be focusing
Yeah.
on, because it's easy to go overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's it's very important to have that. Like, it's, you need to know yourself, and the only way you can know yourself is you can actually, like, talk to yourself.
Sure. Did you start meditating later in life? or
Yes,
just-
and
okay.
it was like right after I quit. I'm on and off. Like, I did the whole guided meditation. Then I got, like, really into it, like, obsessively into it during COVID, because it was just, like, nothing else to do.
Yeah.
I was literally, like, I meditate for like an hour. Like, it was just crazy, like,
Yeah.
very spiritual, like, all this stuff. And then it's like the pendulum always kind of swings. I miss COVID at times. Like, I really do, because there was a calmness of it where
Things
it's like,
stopped.
yeah, you actually got to get your stuff done. Now it's like, I overwhelm myself, and I see it happening to people around me, because you just say yes to everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing too, is like saying no, and just setting boundaries for yourself and being like no, and being okay with that. Like, I have a terrible time doing that, because
Yeah, we
I always
actually-
want to please people. Like, I have an issue of trying to please people.
Yeah, we actually did a bonus episode too one other time about the
Saying
importance
no.
of saying no to opportunities that are just going to be too, whatever for you.
Yeah,
Whether
it's
it's
gotta
too
fit.
time.
Yeah, totally. And
Yeah.
it comes back to, like, passion. Like, if you're
Yeah.
not passionate for it, don't do it.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
may not even be
Waste
the
of
right
time.
fit. I know we had a gentleman here, was it Ryan, that runs
The Maker's Market.
Yeah, and he said no to a significant sponsor.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't the right fit.
Yeah.
And that's, that's why the money doesn't drive it. It's like, does this work for what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then.
And that's true to your truth. Like,
Yeah.
understanding your truth helps that.
Yeah. I think one thing too is you kind of always have to have that belief. Like, okay, I always have this feeling too that entrepreneurs have that little bit of crazy in them. I think all of
We're
us
all a little
do.
maniacal, yeah.
Where you have to be your biggest cheerleader sometimes to be like, this has to work. Like, this definitely is gonna work,
Yeah.
no matter what. Like, there was a long time that the thing I'm doing was not making money.
Yeah.
Where I was like, but you just believe, like,
Yeah.
I know the concept is right and it's gonna work.
Yeah.
Do you have that, and like, how do you drive yourself forward when, like you said, like, there's, maybe not working the way you wanted to as fast as you wanted to,
Yeah.
but you just know, like, this is gonna eventually catch on.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of mirror talks. I spend a lot of time just hyping myself, like, literally in the mirror. I'm like, dude, you're the man. Like, go
Got
out and do
to.
shit.
I love
Like,
that.
no, seriously. Like,
I think it's a great idea.
But I have an unbelievable support network. Like my fiance is amazing. She stuck through a lot of stuff. My dad, we have a very special relationship, and he's a very big realist. So I'm like, all this. He's like, does it drive revenue? And I'm like, no, but it's cool. It's
Like
right? So it's like he's been able to keep me on the rails at times. I'm very, very grateful for him. But just like family and like having those people around you. Now, I have one buddy. I don't even know if it was. He's one of my best friends. I love him to death. But he is like so like cynical around. He's like, dude, you're not gonna do this. And he gave me money. Like invested a little bit of money in the company. He's like, this is a dumb idea. Like this is all.
As he's handing you a check, don't do it.
It's funny though, 'cause it's like over the years, he's like, shit, you're actually kind of pulling some of this off. And I think a big thing too is just like trusting the process. Like
Yeah.
I look back over the last 4 years of like operations, and I knew like I tried to raise like $1 million right out of the gate, and I know for a fact had I done that and successfully raised $1 million, the company would have gone under because I was not prepared for that.
You were prepared to handle $1 million
Yeah,
worth of...
I had no idea what I was going to spend the money around. I mean, I was still walking around in custom suits, you know, like but I mean, just real, like it was just like, I had no idea, right?
Yeah.
And even now, like I look back at all these instances in life, and like it's little moments that you don't think make a big difference, but it really like in the grand scheme when you paint this picture, you're like, oh my god, like that brought me to this point, right?
Yeah.
I blew my Achilles out in 2019, and met through one of my best friends who went to Marquette as well. Introduced me to a PT, and I started seeing her, and she's like, oh my god, you gotta meet my other patient. And this guy ended up becoming one of our first and largest investors, right? So it's just like, and it gives me chills talking about like,
Things
it's
happen,
crazy,
yeah.
like, it's
It's
just
just
weird,
so-
like the world's much more connected than you think,
Yeah,
right?
and it-
You just pause to let it happen.
I think it's so true. It's one of those things where, like, as long as you treat people the right way, those will come to you. You know, I know Omar
Marvelous
actually talked about that
Yeah.
this year. It's just you gotta
You have to.
learn all the things you took here and bring them out in the real
Yeah.
world, and they will.
Totally. And like helping people is like, I had a call today. There are these two like 23-year-old kids in DC, and they got connected to their buddy, and I was like, absolutely, I'll talk to you, because all it takes is like one conversation with someone and like one meeting that can change the trajectory of like everywhere you're going. So like I will always say yes for the most part to most meetings, but because I had a lot of people who said no.
Yeah.
I was like, that's messed up. Like,
Yeah.
you know, at some point in your career, you needed a hand.
You were in that
And
same
I think-
spot.
Yeah, so it's like for me, I'm like, I'm building as much karma points as I can. So it's like, if this thing doesn't go, the next thing will go.
You got
Right, like
points.
something's gonna happen. I'm cashing in at some point.
Well, yeah, I'd say, well, too, you also are getting something out of that,
Right.
whether that
Yeah.
something that they say may spark something that creates an idea for you to
Right.
go down,
Yeah.
you know, with a new feature in the app that ends up being a huge revenue.
Right,
generator.
exactly.
All because you took that one yes
Yeah.
to start it,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So I think there's value in that too, like I said, like you pick up things along the way.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about where things are kind of headed for you, as far as SavorWe, if you're expanding out, where you kind of operate in, and where you kind of want to push things, without giving away too much.
No, yeah,
Tell us everything.
Yeah, we're Chicago, Minneapolis, down in Miami and Fort Lauderdale right now. The way like things are trending, I think there's a way to like kind of mash up some companies together potentially and like build this bigger brand. Eventually I want to sell. Like I don't want to be in this forever. So my goal is to hopefully in the next 5 years, like you have to, when you start something, you have to commit. It's like 5 to 10 years realistically. And if you don't have the right support system, like that's going to be a really long 5 to 10 years. Like I make no money, zero. Like at the most I paid myself was like 30 grand a year. But anyways, yeah, I think the long-term vision on everything is kind of owning different parts of like food, right? So you have like private chefs. There may be things around like pop-ups. There might be stuff, you know, in meal prep, things like that.
Sure.
But there's exit ideas that float around all the time. You just kind of think like, okay, who would potentially buy this? But eventually, like that's what I want to do. And like, I'm very, very long on Chicago. I love Chicago. I think it's an amazing city to build in. There is a lot of building happening, but it's just kind of fragmented, so I really want to
Sure.
I'd like to have an exit so then I can come back and do it, even if I don't have an exit here, like build something like a fund and start investing. Because my biggest issue is like, it's really hard to find capital in Chicago, at least at an angel stage. Like all the angel investors it's Midwest money. And Midwest money is scared money for the most part. But a lot of the VCs say they'll invest early stage, but they won't. And then the angels that do, which is still amazing because they are a big part of the ecosystem, they're just writing smaller checks. And you realistically need like $250K to get something going. So I'd like to give back somehow.
Sure, definitely. Well, if people want to get involved and kind of learn more about it, especially people listening and watching, where's the best place to go learn about SavorWe?
Just the website, www.savorwe.com.
I was gonna guess that.
Yeah, you know.
We're
We're gonna change it to AI so we can go raise like $20 million.
Yeah, AI will do it.
There's AI in here. Yeah, I think that, and try and experience out, like, see for yourself.
Yeah, give it a whirl.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
And we are the Hustling Sideways
We are.
podcast. We don't have the .ai website.
No, we don't.
We have.
Do we have
we have a
a
link.
website?
No, we got a link tree. You can
We got a
check
link
that
tree.
out.
I
But you
I
can
have no
find
idea
us.
what's going on.
Yeah, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We are on YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, and that's all of them.
That's it, probably. MySpace,
Well,
Zanga.
we should just go back to
Yeah.
we should go back to MySpace.
And our buddy profile. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, oh yeah. If we get like an AIM instant messenger,
That'd be awesome.
send us
We'll talk about that.
message us your side hustle and
Yeah.
we'll send back like a
Yeah,
kind
just carry on, keep going. Yeah.
the whole 90s
Mhm.
conversation. So many people in this room are alienated right now. No, if you do want to be a guest on the show too, we have an email. It's hustlingsideways@gmail.com. That one, everybody knows.
No, we
Everybody's
all know
got
that
an
one,
email.
yeah.
And you can of course check out this podcast wherever you get your podcasts as well and subscribe and rate us 5 stars.
5
and all that
stars,
stuff.
yeah, that's a
So-
rule, not our rule, the rule.
So, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you to the 707 Hub for doing this as well, for supporting this podcast. And Jim,
Keep on hustling.
we'll see you next week.